Good day, everybody. Dave Walker here on a sunny day in very, very cold Chicago. And I'm pleased to bring you this session on a really interesting technology and use of data that I think could not be more applicable for the times that we are in than this one. And that's why I'm excited to bring it to you. I want to introduce to you guys Rob Davis, who's the CEO and Chief Marketing Officer of Novus Media. Rob?
Hello, everybody.
And his partner in crime, Mr. Nick Hengel.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Nick. So either one of you guys can take this question, but I think that I know what Novus Media is and does, but I'm not sure members of our audience do. So between the two of you, why don't you give us the 411 on what basically Novus Media is and does, and what your product and service offering is and does.
Sure, I can jump in. So at heart, we plan and buy media, and our specialization is local media. So that's kind of these geographically focused media buys and plans. So that's kind of the heart. So we, our client base, just to give you a sense, we have clients like regional furniture retailer, like American Signature. We do work for Walgreens that's really centered around their specific locations. We do co-op media advertising for Wendy's west of Mississippi. So you can kind of see kind of the spectrum of clients, but we particularly specialize in clients who have some sort of physical location that they're trying to drive customers to. Mm-hmm. And then kind of it's basically the who, what, where, why, when. So, who using data and insights, who are the best possible customers to target, when in terms of time of day of year, time of year, and then where is a big focus. So where in terms of which channels, it should be television or radio or digital, what forms of digital, and then where geographically. And that's a big focus and a specialization of ours, of down at a zip code and sub-zip code level based on the kind of response we're seeing to the advertising, what's the most effective and efficient places to put our clients' dollars.
So you're kind of constantly working in this world of indexing, basically the power of the marketing power, the marketing potential of store locations and kind of tight geographies. Is that a good way of kind of characterizing it?
Yeah, we historically that's sort of been our foundation, is taking a lot of data. So Nick created a tool that we call Depth Finder as an example, that it actually pulls 50,000 data points for every zip code. What is it? 20,000 zip codes in the U.S.
And halfway there, Rob, 40,000.
40,000. Excuse me. Sorry,
right.
I cut you in half. But at that really granular level, be able to things like demographics, race, ethnicity, household income, consumer behavior patterns, competitive activity in terms of media and advertising, what's your competition doing, and then compiling. So kind of everything we do leads to essentially an index of what's a good place to advertise, where would you expect to see a return on investment, and what are the less good or bad areas at a geographic level, and where would you not expect to get a great return, so don't spend a lot of money there. And that kind of, it's a nice way of taking all the complexity and sort of boiling it down. At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to.
And so with that as a background, I was absolutely flabbergasted by this thing you guys created called the ReEntry Readiness Index. So Nick, tell us about the bridge from the platform that you so elegantly use to make media choices that really started to create this idea of, hey, we're really going to have to start to prepare for and understand how the recovery is happening on almost a zip code level basis.
Yeah, that's right. And so, like as Rob was saying, this idea of creating an index, that's what we do. So the idea of the ReEntry Index, that wasn't new to us. The why, the idea that we're having to deal with a pandemic and its economic fallout, that was new. But triangulating data, looking at all the different sources to figure out when, where, why, who, and ultimately how much we should be spending is what we do every day. And so we really kind of, as we sat down and we're trying to figure out, well, what's going on, we kind of landed on there's three key components when we specifically talk about the reentry index: consumer readiness, geopolitical readiness, and then ultimately the client's readiness. And so from a consumer standpoint, are they actually able to, and willing to conduct commerce like they used to? As Rob mentioned, we drive to store locations. That's what we do from our media buys. And so it's all about what signals and what data can we look at to help understand, is the consumer raising their hand saying, hey, I'm ready now to kind of conduct my commerce as I had been previously. The second one, geopolitical readiness. This is COVID. This is the pandemic. Is it between shutdowns and restrictions, now recovery and vaccines? There are other forces that we as marketers hadn't had to ever consider in conducting a media plan. You never had to worry about, is there going to be a governmental restriction on can the store be open or not? That's very new and novel. And so, consumers, geopolitical readiness, and then ultimately, the third piece is the client. Like, is that business ready? Do they need traffic? There are some clients of ours in certain categories, sporting goods and furniture, for example. When people have been home all day, that couch literally wears out and you're sick of looking at it. So our furniture retailers have been seeing great sales. Go try to find a pair of snowshoes right now in the state of Minnesota. Good luck. You can't buy them. And so depending on your category, depending on supply chain issues, you might not be in a position that you should or need to be advertising. And so to look at all those factors across the board to say, think of it as like a stoplight, all those need to be green before it really makes sense for you to spend your marketing dollars to drive sales in return.
So can the platform then really kind of reflect the health of small businesses on a zip code level basis, do you think?
Yeah, small businesses are they're amazing. It's I come from a family of small business owners, and so I have nothing but respect for them. Unfortunately, our data sources like to talk about the Walmarts and the Targets of the world more than anything, right? And so what we have to rely on for small businesses specifically is what's the economic environment as a whole, knowing that the concept of a retail mall was created to have anchor stores bring in traffic to the smaller stores, right? And so we know that if there's other signals around how commerce is being conducted, around mobility, that's really something that we've honed in on, consumer mobility data, tracking on your cell phone, if you will. That's a really great leading indicator of, is it a right time, and are people out and about, and is there an opportunity to bring them into your retail location as a small business owner?
So just as a matter of again of kind of technical explanation, does your platform really support pretty much any data stream that comes into it, as long as it can be kind of assigned a zip code, so that if somebody had historical sales data, or if somebody had wireless penetration, I mean, any number of different things, those could all be kind of incorporated in to create the same kind of index-based map?
That's exactly right. I use the term currency, right? Like, there's a different currency to describe each business. Sometimes it's foot traffic, sometimes it's an order, sometimes it's average ticket. So as long as there's a metric that, more of it is better, we can kind of use that to index and say, this is where you want to go. And so, yeah, our platform is built in a way that what's relevant for that client is what we use to build our index. And that's why you start with 50,000, but maybe we use 6 different variables that are the most predictive and explanatory for that client specific business, who they're targeting, what they're selling, what their price point is, what season it is. So it's dynamic by nature. And that's why my team exists, is to help our strategists figure out what's that right recipe. Our pantry's stocked, and now we just have to cook the meal that the client wants us to.
That's very cool. And so the readiness, as you guys call it, the reentry readiness index, that readiness is really kind of a proxy to receptivity, is really kind of this is going to be a good place for me to place my offering, to put out my product or service.
Yeah,
Is that,
very in a very practical level, we've had, and it's interesting because certainly for small businesses, but even see it across some larger businesses, everyone's asking the same question, which is, okay, we've got challenging economic times in most categories, and I've got a limited marketing budget, and where should I put it? And you don't want to waste it. The last thing you want to do is waste it through either one of the factors Nick, right? It's that combination of the three Nick talked about. But we've got a restaurant client that we've been working with on this, and they're, it's some of the restaurants are closed by the government, even though the consumers are dying to go out, and even though the rest of the economic activity is there, they just can't go. And so, it really just boils down to that simple: is where do you put your dollars? Again, in this neighborhood on this side of the street might be open, and literally the next street over may be closed. And so it sometimes has to get that granular to really understand where to put your dollars.
As you guys have been really working with this over the course of the last many months, are you seeing really kind of an unevenness around the country of, quote, readiness based on the data that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about, thinking back to almost a year ago now, when we're sitting down, virtually, and saying that, what are we going to do about this? What can we, provide to our clients from a service perspective? We didn't know where the bottom was. We didn't know how bad was it going to get. You just didn't know. And midsummer, maybe late summer, as things, they didn't improve, but at least they stabilized. I think we could have a clear picture of that. It's going to change. It's not going to be equally distributed, and what's happening today isn't going to be what's happening in a few weeks. We've seen that with the waves hit the northeast, to the southeast, to the southwest, etc. And so I think the idea of getting the right signals and having them be as real time as they can be, and to have an approach that can assess what's changing and what's happening is key, because stability with the situation we're under just isn't like it used to be. There's no more consistent baseline. And so we have to be monitoring, and we have to be adjusting to it, not expecting that history is going to give us any sort of indication of what the future actually brings.
So this is obviously, as we steer into 2021, and it appears as though, God willing, crossed fingers, that we're going to actually have a recovery that is going to produce readiness. You guys are really kind of poised to monitor that and measure that and be able to really create that advice on really a very hyper local level. So as you've, we've talked a little bit about how, boy, that would be a really interesting hyper local insight that Verizon could use for its many, many different store locations. And more importantly, their many, many, many field sales reps. So there's no real point for them to get too overly aggressive in a place where, frankly, it's just not ready yet. Is that a fair kind of application for what the Reentry Readiness Index can do?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we've been kind of talking about extremes, but there's the vast majority of stuff sort of in the middle, right? Where, if it's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most ready, that's clearly you want to put dollars there. They're ready. You have a sense from the data they're going to get a return. Then there's the ones where, like, oh my gosh, don't go anywhere near that. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the middle, right? Where this type of approach helps you prioritize. And, if you just did the 10s, you'd be in, you wouldn't be covering enough of your potential, in the case of Verizon, you wouldn't be covering enough of the country because they've got stores all over the country. If you just, so it helps you kind of prioritize and go, okay, well, now we go into the 9s, now we go into the 8s, now we go into the 7s. And what are the trade-offs and the implications of that? So it's like any tool, it doesn't give you the answer. And as Nick said, it really is fuel for our ours or whomever uses it, the strategists, to be able to kind of go, okay, what are the trade-offs? What can I expect realistically? Because history, who knows? Mm-hmm. All the market mix, all the millions of dollars of market mix models, which are fantastic, we're able to kind of adjust those and go, okay, but in a COVID environment, what does that mean? And so, there's a healthy, tons of data behind it, but with a healthy dose of sort of smart strategy.
Well, you guys have explained this really, really well, and I think that I leave it to our audience to really kind of use their own imagination, particularly as it impacts their marketing and sales efforts, and where do they really deploy their assets? Because, I think for many large brands, kind of taking the peanut butter approach, where you just spread it across the whole country and hope that it kind of is spread equally, that's just not going to be conducive to what we're really facing as a kind of a very hyper local recovery. So love the name Reentry Readiness. I've told you that, guys, before. How can members of the Institute and viewers of this, how can they engage you guys in exploring whether or not this is something that they could use?
Yeah, simplest way is just to shoot an email to Nick or myself. We've got a simple naming convention. So Rob at novusnext.com or Nick, N-I-K, at novusnext.com. Novusmedia.com is our website. So feel free to poke around there. There's some other, I think, COVID kind of relevant materials and studies that we've got on there. But yeah, just easiest ways to reach out, and happy to set up a meeting and talk through your objectives and see if one of our data sets or tools can help guide you.
And are you equally looking for more data inputs? In other words, are there, there are a number of different players that are in our community that are, frankly, capturing localized data from a number of different angles. Are you also receptive to, like, if a player like Womply, which is kind of a white label solution that tracks a lot of data in point of sale transactions, if they said, hey, we want to give you some data that basically can help to complect readiness as we look at really, where we're deploying ours, they could do that. They could give you their own data sets.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually one of the kind of the long-term, I guess, silver linings, if you will, of the exercise of creating this, realizing the limitations of our current data set and relying on historical trends as the foundation was really comforting. We know we could do it. It was reliable. But yeah, that's one that we learned really quickly of, well, what happens when those trends are no longer relevant? And so the idea of always being on the lookout for what's new and what's the right signal to pick up on is something that we always did, but it was never as urgent as what the spring of 2020 caused us to be. So yeah, we'd love to hear from any of your partners that have a similar viewpoint on what signals can be used to capture the right data signals to build a better marketing plan.
Well, you have my commitment to try and advance that, because I think what you guys are doing is just super, super cool. And I thank you a lot for sharing just this concept of reentry readiness and getting us all prepared in our plans for 2021. Here's another way of looking at the challenges that any of our brands are going to face, and really getting their markets standing back up again with their small business customers. So much appreciated, guys, and would love to have you back. Are you interested in coming back and maybe giving us an update on this as the year progresses?
You bet. We'd love to. Yeah.
Would love to have you. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks very much for this. This was very, very helpful. I know it was short and sweet, but I think that the concept came across very clearly, and hopefully we'll be able to garner some interest. So thanks very much, Rob.
You bet. Yeah, thanks. Hopefully it's helpful for folks.
And Nick, thanks very much to you as well.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. It's been great.
All righty. Thanks, guys.